The garage smelled like motor oil and broken dreams. I wiped my hands on an old rag, listening to the muffled laughter coming from inside our Victorian house. 22 years of marriage, and Jennifer still laughed like that. Bright, musical, the sound that first caught my attention at that college party back when Reagan was president. What I couldn't figure out was why she never laughed like that with me anymore. "Dad's so clueless," my daughter Emma's voice carried through the thin walls. "He actually thinks you're working late all those nights." My wrench slipped, scraping my knuckles against the engine block. The pain was sharp, immediate, but nothing compared to the cold realization spreading through my chest. "Emma, don't," Jennifer's voice softer now. "He's a good man. He doesn't understand my world anymore." I set down the wrench carefully, quietly. The Mustang's engine suddenly seemed less important than whatever conversation was happening 20 feet away. "Mom, you deserve better. Someone who gets your ambitions, your dreams, someone like—" "Shh, not here." The kitchen door slammed, and I heard Jennifer's heels clicking across the hardwood floor toward the stairs. I stood there in the dim garage light, staring at my reflection in the chrome bumper of my 1987 Mustang. 43 years old, maintenance supervisor at the mill, hands permanently stained with grease no matter how hard I scrubbed. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe I was clueless, but I wasn't stupid. The next morning, Jennifer kissed my cheek with the same mechanical precision she used to organize her marketing presentations. Her perfume was different, something expensive, floral. Not the vanilla scent I'd been buying her for birthdays. "Working late again tonight," she said, already checking her phone. "Big presentation tomorrow." "Third time this week," I said, watching her face. "The Henderson account is crucial, Tom. You know how important this is for my career." I knew. Jennifer had been climbing the ladder at Morrison & Associates for 5 years, ever since Emma started college. The shy girl I'd married had transformed into this polished, ambitious woman who spoke in marketing jargon and networked at wine bars I couldn't afford. "Maybe I could pick you up after work, take you to dinner." Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Her laugh was different from the one I'd heard last night. Strained. "That's sweet, but I'll probably be there until midnight. Rain check?" After she left, I found myself standing in our bedroom, looking at the space she occupied. Her side of the closet had expanded over the years, pushing my clothes into a narrow corner. Designer dresses, expensive shoes, handbags that cost more than my monthly truck payment. That's when I saw it. A gym bag I'd never seen before, tucked behind her winter coats. Black leather, expensive looking. I told myself I was just moving it to get to my work shirts. Told myself I wasn't snooping. The zipper was slightly open. Inside, beneath her yoga clothes and water bottle, was a phone. Not her regular iPhone with the sparkly case Emma had given her for Christmas. This was a basic smartphone, the kind you buy with cash at convenience stores. My hands shook as I powered it on. The messages loaded slowly, each one another crack in the foundation of my world. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Room 237, same as always." L. "Your husband called the office looking for you yesterday. Had to cover for you again. This is getting risky." L. "I dream about leaving him and starting fresh with you. Soon, baby. Soon." J. The timestamps went back months. Hundreds of messages. Photos I couldn't look at for more than a few seconds. Plans, promises, intimate details of a life I knew nothing about. Room 237. The Riverside Inn, most likely. The only decent hotel in our fading mill town. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it, zipped the bag, hung it behind the winter coats. Went to work like nothing had happened. Supervised the maintenance crew, fixed a broken conveyor belt, ate lunch alone in the cafeteria. But inside, something had shifted. The man who'd walked into that bedroom was gone. In his place was someone harder, colder. Someone who finally understood the rules of the game his wife had been playing. That evening, I sat in my Mustang across from the Riverside Inn, engine running, classic rock playing softly on the radio. At 8:47 p.m., Jennifer's silver BMW pulled into the parking lot. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, reapplied lipstick, then walked into the lobby like she owned the place. 15 minutes later, a red Porsche pulled up. The driver was younger than me, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of carefully styled hair that screamed expensive salon. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I'd seen him before. At Jennifer's office Christmas party. Lucas Morrison, the boss's son, creative director, the golden boy who'd never worked a real day in his life. They met in the lobby, and even from across the parking lot, I could see the way they looked at each other. The way Jennifer used to look at me, back when we were young and broke and happy. I waited until they disappeared into the elevator, then I got out of my car. The Porsche was parked in a handicapped space, because of course it was. I walked around it slowly, admiring the paint job, the custom wheels, the vanity plate that read, Creative. From my pocket, I pulled out my keys. The house key was sharp, recently cut. It made a satisfying sound as it scraped along the driver's side door, from headlight to taillight. Then I went home and waited. Jennifer came back at 11:30, smelling like hotel soap and lies. She kissed my forehead as I pretended to sleep, then slipped into the bathroom for a long shower. When she finally came to bed, she curled up against me like she used to and whispered, "I love you, Tom." I stared at the ceiling and planned my next move. The beauty of a small town is that everyone knows everyone else's business. The curse is the same thing. Ray Kowalski had owned Murphy's Tavern for 15 years, ever since he retired from the police force. He was the kind of bartender who remembered your drink, your troubles, and your secrets in that order, which made him the perfect person to talk to about my situation. "You sure about this?" Ray asked, polishing a glass with mechanical precision. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. Too late for that. I took a sip of my beer, savoring the bitter taste. Besides, I need to know how deep this goes. "Lucas Morrison," Ray said, shaking his head. "That kid's been trouble since high school. Daddy's money always got him out of whatever mess he made." "What kind of messes?" "The usual rich boy stuff. DUI, a couple of harassment complaints from female employees. Nothing that stuck. Word is he's been working his way through the office staff for years." The beer turned sour in my mouth. "How long have people been talking about him and Jennifer?" Ray's silence was answer enough. "Ray, 6 months, maybe more. I'm sorry, Tom. I figured you knew and were just dealing with it. Dealing with it, like it was a leaky roof or a broken transmission, something you lived with until you could afford to fix it." "I need names," I said. "Who else knows?" Ray sighed, set down the glass. "Tom, this isn't going to make you feel better." "I'm past feeling better. I want the truth." Over the next hour, Ray laid it out for me. Jennifer and Lucas had been seen together at restaurants in the next town over. Her yoga instructor had mentioned Jennifer talking about someone special who understood her ambitions. The girls at the office had been covering for her, taking messages, providing alibis. Even Emma knew. My own daughter had been helping her mother cheat on me. Oh, by the time I left Murphy's, the rage had crystallized into something colder, more focused. I drove home through streets I'd known my whole life, past the high school where Jennifer and I had met, past the church where we'd gotten married, past the park where we'd pushed Emma on swings when she was small. All of it felt like someone else's life now. The house was dark when I got home. Jennifer's car was gone. Another late night at the office. I went straight to the bedroom, found the hidden phone, and started reading. The messages from the past week painted a picture that made me physically sick. Plans to leave me after Emma graduated. Discussions about my pathetic attempts to connect with Jennifer. Jokes about my appearance, my job, my truck. But it was the message from 3 days ago that stopped me cold. Told Tom I was working late. He actually offered to pick me up from the office. Can you imagine his face if he saw us together? Jay. Your husband is so trusting. Almost feel bad for the guy. Almost. L. Don't. He's had 20 years of me. Time for someone who appreciates what he's got. J. I put the phone away and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at our wedding photo on the nightstand. We looked so young, so happy. Jennifer's dress had been a simple white gown from a department store. We'd honeymooned at a cabin in the mountains because it was all we could afford. When had that stopped being enough for her? When had I stopped being enough? My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Working really late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, Love you too. Drive safe. Then I got dressed and drove back to the Riverside Inn. This time I didn't just watch from the parking lot. I walked into the lobby like I belonged there, nodded to the desk clerk, and took the elevator to the second floor. Room 237 was at the end of the hall, and I could hear them through the thin walls. Jennifer's voice, breathless and happy in a way I hadn't heard in years. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, listening to my marriage die, then went back downstairs and asked the desk clerk a question. Excuse me, I'm supposed to meet my wife here, but I forgot what room she's in. Jennifer Walsh, she's with Lucas Morrison. The kid behind the desk looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, sir, I can't give out guest information. No problem, I said, sliding a 20 across the counter. I'll just call her. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jennifer's number. From upstairs, I could hear her phone ringing through the ceiling. The desk clerk's face went pale. "Room 237, he whispered. "Thanks," I said, pocketing the 20. But I already knew that. I left the hotel and drove to Lucas Morrison's apartment complex, a trendy development downtown with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. His Porsche was in the parking garage, and I could see where he'd tried to buff out the scratch I'd left. The repair job was sloppy, obvious. I took the elevator to the 4th floor and found his apartment. The door was expensive, solid wood with a fancy electronic lock. But the windows facing the fire escape were original, single-pane glass with simple latches. I didn't break in. I wasn't ready for that level of commitment yet, but I stood on that fire escape and looked into Lucas Morrison's life through his living room window. Expensive furniture, abstract art, a wine collection that probably cost more than my annual salary, photos of Lucas at charity events, golf tournaments, company parties. In several of them, I could see Jennifer in the background, smiling, beautiful, looking like she belonged in that world. Maybe she did belong there. Maybe I was the one who didn't fit anymore. But that didn't mean I was going to make it easy for them. I climbed back down the fire escape and walked to my truck, already planning my next move. Jennifer wanted to play games? Fine. I'd been fixing broken things my whole life. Time to learn how to break them. The Morrison and Associates office building was downtown, a renovated warehouse with exposed brick and industrial lighting that screamed creative. I'd been there exactly twice. Once for Jennifer's first Christmas party, and once to pick her up when her car was in the shop. Both times, I'd felt like an intruder in my own wife's world. Now I sat in the parking lot, watching the morning routine unfold, employees arriving in their compact cars and SUVs, clutching coffee cups and checking phones. Lucas pulled up in his scratched Porsche at exactly 8:45, 15 minutes after everyone else. The boss's son didn't punch a time clock. Jennifer arrived 10 minutes later, parking her BMW in the spot next to his. They didn't acknowledge each other in the parking lot, but I saw the quick glance they shared, the slight smile that passed between them. Professional, discreet, practiced. I waited until they'd both gone inside, then walked across the street to the diner where I'd eaten lunch 1,000 times. The waitress, Dolores, had worked there since the Carter administration and knew everyone's business. "Tom Walsh," she said, pouring coffee without being asked. "Don't usually see you downtown during work hours." "Playing hooky," I said. "Thought I'd surprise Jennifer with lunch." "That's sweet. She works hard, that one. Always here late, weekends sometimes." "Yeah, she's dedicated. Speaking of which, you know Lucas Morrison?" Dolores's expression shifted slightly. "The Morrison boy? Sure, I know him. Comes in here sometimes with different girls from the office. Real charmer, that one." "Different girls?" "Oh, you know how it is with these creative types. Always networking, building relationships." Her tone suggested she had opinions about the kind of relationships Lucas built. I left the diner with more questions than answers, but one thing was becoming clear. Jennifer wasn't Lucas's first office romance, which meant she probably wouldn't be his last. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called in sick to work and drove to the public library. The librarian, Mrs. Henderson, remembered me from when Emma was little, and I'd bring her for story time. "Research project," I told her, settling in front of a computer terminal. What I found over the next 3 hours changed everything. Lucas Morrison had a pattern. In the 5 years since he'd joined his father's company, 3 female employees had left suddenly. No lawsuits, no public complaints, just quiet departures with generous severance packages. I found their names in old company newsletters, their LinkedIn profiles showing gaps in employment that coincided with their time at Morrison and Associates. One of them, Rebecca Chen, still lived in town. She worked at a dental office now, had gotten married last year. Her wedding announcement in the local paper mentioned her husband's job at the state police barracks. I memorized her address. That evening, Jennifer came home at her usual time, 7:30, just late enough to avoid dinner conversation, but not so late as to arouse suspicion. She kissed my cheek, asked about my day, complained about traffic. "How's the Henderson account coming along?" I asked. "Oh, you know, lots of moving parts. Lucas has some interesting ideas about the campaign direction." "Lucas Morrison?" "The creative director, yes. He's very talented." I nodded, watching her face. "Must be nice working with someone who gets your vision." Something flickered in her eyes. "Yes, it is." After dinner, she went upstairs to review presentations. I waited until I heard the shower running, then checked the hidden phone. The messages from today were routine. Logistics, timing, endearments that made my stomach turn. But there was something new, a thread that made my pulse quicken. Dad's asking questions about the Henderson account. Thinks we're spending too much time together. L. What kind of questions? J. Nothing specific, but maybe we should cool it at the office for a while. L. I'm tired of hiding, Lucas. When are we going to stop pretending? J. Soon. After the Henderson presentation, then we can figure out our next steps. L. Our next steps. Like I was just an obstacle to be navigated around. I put the phone back and went to my garage, where I kept a bottle of whiskey hidden behind my toolbox. The first sip burned, but the second went down smooth. 22 years of marriage. A daughter in college. A house we'd bought together, fixed up together, made into a home together. And Jennifer was ready to throw it all away for Lucas Morrison, a man who collected office affairs like trophies. The whiskey made me philosophical. Maybe this was just how these things went. Maybe I was the cliché, the blue-collar husband whose wife outgrew him, traded up for a better model. But the whiskey also made me angry. And anger, I was discovering, was a much more useful emotion than self-pity. I spent the next hour in the garage planning. Not just revenge. That was too simple, too crude. What I wanted was justice. I wanted Jennifer and Lucas to understand the consequences of their choices. I wanted them to feel what I'd felt, sitting in that hotel parking lot, listening to my marriage end through a thin wall. I wanted them to know what it felt like to lose everything. The plan that emerged was elegant in its simplicity. I wouldn't confront them directly. That would just make me the villain, the bitter husband who couldn't let go. Instead, I would let their own actions destroy them. All I had to do was make sure the right people were watching when it happened. I finished the whiskey and went inside. Jennifer was already asleep, curled up on her side of the bed, her phone charging on the nightstand. She looked peaceful, innocent, like the girl I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Tomorrow I would start dismantling her life. But tonight I just watched her sleep and remembered what it felt like to trust someone completely. It was a feeling I knew I'd never have again. Rebecca Chen agreed to meet me at a coffee shop on the other side of town. She was smaller than I'd expected, with short black hair and intelligent eyes that sized me up the moment I walked in. "You're Jennifer Walsh's husband," she said. It wasn't a question. Tom Walsh. Thanks for agreeing to see me. She stirred her latte slowly, deliberately. When you called, you said you had questions about Morrison and Associates. I assume this isn't about their marketing services. Lucas Morrison, I said. I think you know why I'm here. Rebecca's laugh was bitter. Let me guess. Your wife is working late a lot, taking calls in private, buying new clothes, maybe new perfume, acting like she's got a secret that makes her feel special. The accuracy of her assessment hit me like a physical blow. How did you... Because I was her 3 years ago. Young, ambitious, flattered by the attention of the boss's son. Lucas has a type, Mr. Walsh. Smart women who feel underappreciated in their marriages. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos, then showed me the screen. It was a picture of Lucas at what looked like a company retreat, his arm around a blonde woman I didn't recognize. That's Amanda Pierce. She was before me. Left the company suddenly in 2018, moved to California, last I heard. Another swipe. This is Sarah Kim. She was after me. Lasted about 8 months before Lucas got bored. What happened to you? Rebecca's expression hardened. I fell for it completely. Left my fiancé, quit my job at the bank, thought Lucas and I were going to build a life together. Then his father found out about us, and suddenly Lucas discovered he wasn't ready for anything serious. I got a severance package and a non-disclosure agreement. You signed it? I was broke, unemployed, and humiliated. What choice did I have? She leaned forward. But NDAs don't cover conversations with concerned spouses. What do you want to know? Over the next hour, Rebecca gave me a masterclass in Lucas Morrison's methods. The gradual seduction, the promises of a better life, the way he made women feel like they were special, chosen, and then the inevitable discard when the novelty wore off or the situation became complicated. He'll never leave his comfortable life for your wife, Rebecca said as we prepared to leave. Men like Lucas don't sacrifice for love. They collect experiences. What if I could prove that to Jennifer? Show her what he really is? You could try. But women in love don't want to hear the truth, Mr. Walsh. They want to believe the fantasy. She paused at the door. Although, there might be another way. What do you mean? Rebecca smiled, and for the first time since we'd met, she looked genuinely happy. Lucas Morrison destroyed my life once. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to return the favor. That night, I implemented phase 1 of what I'd started thinking of as the Henderson account, my own campaign to expose the truth about my wife's affair. Jennifer was at another late meeting, which gave me access to her laptop. She'd always been careless with passwords, using Emma's birthday for everything. Her email account opened on the first try. What I found there was worse than the secret phone. Months of correspondence with Lucas, but also with her friends, her sister, even Emma. Jennifer had been building a narrative, painting me as neglectful, emotionally distant, holding her back from her true potential. She'd been preparing everyone for our divorce long before I knew there was a problem. But she'd also been careless. The email thread with her lawyer was particularly illuminating. Jennifer had been researching divorce proceedings, asset division, custody arrangements. She'd even gotten a preliminary assessment of our house's value. I forwarded the most damaging emails to a new account I'd created, then cleared the browser history. Jennifer would never know I'd been there. Phase 2 began the next morning. I called Morrison and Associates and asked to speak with Mr. Morrison Sr. about a potential marketing contract for the mill. His secretary put me through immediately. "Mr. Walsh, what can we do for you?" "I'm looking for a company to handle a campaign for our upcoming expansion. Jennifer mentioned you might be interested in discussing it." "Jennifer?" "My wife, Jennifer Walsh. She works for you." There was a pause. "Of course, Jennifer's one of our best account managers. I'd be happy to set up a meeting." "Actually, I was hoping to keep this between us for now. Jennifer's been working so hard lately, all those late nights with Lucas on the Henderson account. I'd hate to add to her stress." Another pause, longer this time. "Late nights with Lucas?" "Oh yes, they've been burning the midnight oil. Very dedicated, both of them. Jennifer's always talking about how well they work together." "I see. Well, let me look at our schedule and get back to you." I hung up knowing I'd planted a seed. Morrison Sr. was old school, family values, church on Sunday. He wouldn't appreciate his son conducting business after hours with married employees. Phase 3 required more patience. That evening, I followed Jennifer to the Riverside Inn again, but this time I had backup. Rebecca had given me the phone number of a private investigator she'd consulted during her own ordeal with Lucas. For $300, he would document my wife's adultery with professional quality photographs and video. I sat in my truck and watched him work, feeling strangely detached from the whole process. This was my life being cataloged, my marriage being reduced to evidence in a divorce proceeding I hadn't wanted. But as I watched Jennifer and Lucas through the hotel window, laughing and touching like teenagers, I realized something important. I wasn't trying to save my marriage anymore. I was trying to end it on my terms. The investigator finished his work and approached my truck. "Got everything you need," he said, handing me a memory card. "Timestamps, clear faces, no question what's happening." "How long before word gets around?" He shrugged. "Small town like this? Week, maybe 2. People talk." Perfect. That would give me time for the final phase. When Jennifer came home that night, smelling like hotel soap and guilt, I was waiting in the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee and a gentle smile. "How was your day?" I asked. "Long, tiring. The Henderson account is really demanding." "I'm sure it is. Listen, I've been thinking. Maybe we should plan something special for our anniversary next month. A trip somewhere, just the 2 of us." Jennifer's face went pale. "Our anniversary?" 23 years, Jennifer. Can you believe it?" She fumbled for words, and I realized she'd forgotten completely. In all her planning for her new life, she'd lost track of the old one. "That sounds lovely," she finally managed. "But I might be traveling for work around then. Big presentation in Boston." "Of course," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Work comes first. I understand." Her relief was visible, and it broke something inside me that I hadn't even known was still intact. "I love you, Jennifer," I said, meaning it despite everything. "I love you too," she replied, and I could tell she was trying to mean it. But we both knew it was too late for love to matter. The Henderson account presentation was scheduled for Thursday morning. By Wednesday night, I had all the pieces in place. Morrison Sr. had been asking questions around the office, according to Rebecca's sources. Nothing direct, nothing accusatory, but enough to make people nervous. The private investigators' photos were already making their way through certain circles, the kind of people who knew how to spread information without leaving fingerprints, and Jennifer was starting to crack under the pressure. "I think someone's been in my office," she said over dinner, pushing food around her plate without eating. Things moved, files out of order. "Maybe the cleaning crew?" I suggested. "Maybe." But she didn't sound convinced. Her phone buzzed constantly now, texts from Lucas, calls from friends, messages from her lawyer. She thought she was being discreet, but stress was making her careless. I'd seen her talking in hushed tones in the garage, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "Everything okay at work?" I asked. "Fine, just busy." You seem tense." She looked at me sharply, as if searching for hidden meaning in the observation. "I'm fine, Tom. Just tired." But she wasn't fine. She was scared, though she didn't understand why yet. Thursday morning, I called in sick again and drove to the Morrison and Associates building. I parked across the street and waited, watching the employees arrive for what they didn't know would be one of the most memorable days in company history. Jennifer arrived at her usual time, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the quick, nervous glances at Lucas's parking space. He was late, which wasn't unusual, but today it seemed to rattle her. At 9:15, Lucas's Porsche pulled into the lot. He sat in the car for several minutes, talking on his phone, gesturing angrily. When he finally got out, his usual confident swagger was missing. Something was wrong in Paradise. The Henderson presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:45, I watched through the building's floor-to-ceiling windows as Morrison Sr. called Lucas into his office. The conversation was brief but heated. I could see the old man's face getting red, Lucas gesturing defensively. Then Morrison Sr. called Jennifer in. The meeting lasted 20 minutes. When Jennifer emerged, her face was white as paper. She walked straight to her desk, grabbed her purse, and headed for the exit. I followed her. She drove to the park where we used to take Emma when she was small, parked by the pond, and sat in her car with her hands over her face. When I tapped on the window, she jumped like I'd fired a gun. "Tom? What are you doing here?" "I called the office. They said you'd left early. Are you okay?" She stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether I was friend or enemy. "Get in," she said finally. I climbed into the passenger seat of her BMW, surrounded by the expensive leather and new car smell that represented everything I couldn't give her. "Someone's been spreading rumors about me," she said without preamble. "About Lucas and me." "What kind of rumors?" That we've been..." She couldn't say it out loud. "Having an affair?" Jennifer flinched like I'd slapped her. "It's not what people think." "What is it then?" For a moment, I thought she might tell me the truth. I could see her wrestling with it, weighing the cost of honesty against the price of continued deception. "It's complicated," she said finally. "Complicated how?" "You wouldn't understand." And there it was, the dismissal I'd been hearing for months without recognizing it. "You wouldn't understand. You're not sophisticated enough, educated enough, ambitious enough to comprehend the complexity of my life." "Try me," I said quietly. Jennifer turned to look at me, really look at me, for the first time in months. "When did we stop talking, Tom? Really talking?" "I don't know. When did you stop wanting to?" She was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did mean for it to happen, Jennifer. People don't accidentally have affairs. They make choices." "You don't know what it's like," she said, anger creeping into her voice. "Being married to someone who's content with mediocrity, who doesn't want anything more than what we have." "What's wrong with what we have?" "Nothing. That's the problem. You're perfectly happy with your job at the mill, your old truck, your beer at Murphy's Tavern. You never wanted more." "I wanted you to be happy." "But I wasn't happy, Tom. Haven't been for years. And you never noticed?" She was right, and we both knew it. I'd been so busy being grateful for what we had that I'd missed the signs that she wanted something different. "So you found someone who did notice," I said. "Lucas understands my ambitions. He sees potential in me that you never did." "What potential is that, Jennifer? The potential to be another notch on his belt? Another office affair that ends with a severance package and a non-disclosure agreement?" Her face went white. "What are you talking about? Rebecca Chen, Amanda Pierce, Sarah Kim. Should I go on?" Jennifer stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "How do you know those names?" "Because I'm not as stupid as you think I am." The silence stretched between us, heavy with 23 years of shared history and recent betrayal. Finally, Jennifer spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "How long have you known?" "About the affair? 3 weeks. About the divorce lawyer? 2 weeks. About Lucas's pattern with married employees? 1 week. Tom, Save it." I opened the car door. "Morrison fired you today, didn't he? And Lucas?" She nodded miserably. "Good. Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to lose something you care about." I got out of the car and walked back to my truck, leaving my wife sitting alone by the pond where we'd once been happy. In my rearview mirror, I could see her still crying, her perfect life crumbling around her like a house of cards. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like the end. That evening, Jennifer came home with boxes from her office and red eyes from crying. Emma was there, home from college for a surprise visit, and I watched my daughter's face as she realized something was terribly wrong. Mom? Dad? What's happening? Jennifer looked at me pleadingly, but I was done protecting her from the consequences of her choices. Your mother has something to tell you, I said. And finally, after months of lies and deception, Jennifer told the truth. The conversation that followed was brutal, painful, and necessary. Emma was angry, disappointed, confused. Jennifer tried to explain, to justify, to minimize. I said very little. When it was over, Emma went to her room and slammed the door. Jennifer sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the wreckage of her carefully constructed lies. What happens now? She asked. Now you figure out what you really want, I said, and you live with the consequences. And us? I looked at the woman I'd loved for half my life, the mother of my child, the person who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my fears. She looked small, defeated, nothing like the confident woman who'd been planning to leave me for a better life. There is no us anymore, Jennifer. You made sure of that. She nodded, accepting the verdict she'd written herself. For what it's worth, she said, I really did love you once. I know, I replied. That's what makes this so sad. The next morning, Jennifer moved in with her sister. The divorce papers arrived a week later. Emma finished the semester but transferred to a school closer to home, saying she wanted to keep an eye on both of us. Lucas Morrison left town quietly, taking a job with a firm in Chicago. Word was his father had given him an ultimatum: leave voluntarily or be fired publicly. He chose the path that preserved his reputation, at least outside our small city. As for me, I kept working at the mill, kept drinking at Murphy's, kept fixing things that were broken. But I also started seeing a counselor, joined a gym, took a cooking class. Small steps toward becoming someone new, someone who might be ready to trust again someday. The house felt empty without Jennifer, but it also felt honest. No more lies, no more pretending, no more walking on eggshells around someone else's secret life. 6 months after the divorce was final, I ran into Rebecca Chen at the grocery store. She was with her husband, a solid-looking guy with kind eyes and calloused hands like mine. How are you doing, Tom? She asked. Better, I said, and meant it. Some days are harder than others, but I'm getting there. Good. You deserve better than what she gave you. I thought about that as I drove home, past the hotel where Jennifer had betrayed our marriage, past the office building where she'd built her fantasy life, past the park where I'd finally confronted the truth. Maybe I did deserve better. Maybe we all did. But first, we had to be brave enough to demand it.